She survived 2 world wars and lived a nomadic life spanning 3 continents. She savored 2 marriages, one blessed, the other cursed. By now, her youth was spent. But optimism gave her strength to start anew at her final destination, a place where she devoted herself once again to her singular passion, painting.
When I saw this land of perpetual summer again, I was completely conquered by it. I had become then a displaced person and was in search of a quiet place somewhere in Asia in which to rehabilitate and continue to paint. I decided then and there to start life afresh in this, my newfound land, or Tahiti.
Much as she longed to do nothing but paint, Georgette needed regular income to put bread on her table. An opportunity came knocking shortly after she arrived in Singapore. Lim Hak Tai invited her to visit the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, or NAFA. It was then the only art school of its kind in the whole of Malaya. And what she saw stirred her interest.
Easels scattered about in the 2 or 3 classrooms downstairs amidst plaster casts of ancient Greek and other figures reminded me of my student days in the academies of New York and Paris. Here was indeed a school where students could study, draw, or paint to their heart's content, 365 days a year.
Lim, the founder and principal of NAFA, was keen for Georgette to join the fraternity. She was trained in Paris, the cultural and art capital of the world, and she was fluent in several languages. Lim, who was also a Chinese émigré artist, saw great potential in Georgette.
我希望你答应能够成为我们学院的全职的老师。
你的好意我心领了，不过我更热爱绘画的。
不管你怎么说，我始终觉得你是最适合的人选啊。如果你加入的话，将会对马来亚的这个艺坛发展是一个大的贡献啊。所以我希望你考虑答应我的建议。
我会回去好好考虑的。
好。
Georgette soon found a way to please her heart and her head. She joined NAFA in 1954 and taught 3 times a week as a part-time tutor.
To have taught full-time in school would have assured me bread and butter. But that would have been artistic suicide. I decided to teach part-time, assuring bread without butter.
Georgette was the first lady teacher at NAFA and then the only one schooled in Paris. She left a deep impression on many students.
Georgette is always immaculately dressed when she comes to work, in a cheongsam, and quite often in a high-heel shoes. She's very patient as a teacher and always spend a lot of time going through the works with the student to correct the work the student has done.
Madam Chan, am I doing this right?
Let me have a look.
张老师对工作非常认真，对美的追求啊是非常执着，但人又很亲切，很容易跟人家亲近。那么对后辈的这个鼓励啊，是非常的不遗余力。
All final year NAFA students came under Georgette's wing,
Can I have the stick, please?
most with anticipation,
Look with me. You see the highlight on the hair?
some with trepidation, for she was strict and scrupulous. No poor drawing went uncorrected.
The knowledge of basic drawing in the career of a painter is imperative and can never be emphasized enough. For with it, perhaps even more than with colors, we are able to capture all the life and still life around us.
The method of teaching is European. You look at something in the object and then you use a pencil to hold it in front of you like that and measure and then draw accordingly, which is a very traditional old method, you know. And then this is how the foundation is laid.
While Georgette could impart Western drawing techniques, she could not recreate the life drawing classes she attended in Paris. There, models were open to posing in the nude. In conservative Asia, few would dare to bare their bodies for art's sake. So the class had to make do with ordinary folk, who sometimes turned into unexpectedly lively subjects.
老师，你看他又动了。
人又不是石膏嘛。
他就经常用这样的话来勉励学生要随机应变。
Soon, more international students began to stream in. They were keen to learn from Georgette, who was known for her oil painting as well as multilingual skills. Over the years, Georgette also took on the roles of school secretary and interpreter to Lim. When the principal's health declined, he offered her his position.
对不起，陈女士，如果你成为学院的院长，我们立刻给你加薪好吗？
不行，一旦升级加薪，我就无法当画家了。您就维持现状，我尽量从旁协助好吗？
但是，
别再说了，钱你收下吧，就让我好好的继续当我的老师。
Lim Yu Kwan took over as principal after his father, Lim Hak Tai, passed away in 1963. Georgette remained as a part-time teacher cum administrator. She appealed to donors for support and helped students to apply for overseas studies. Over the years, she taught most of the second-generation artists in Singapore and Malaysia. Besides gaining her students' respect and affection, she inspired them with her eloquence.
Art and culture are the flowers of a nation. Art is irrepressible because that is how some of us must express ourselves. Given continued peace in this multiracial and harmonious land, the star of the artists will rise.
While Georgette enjoyed her meaningful vocation, she never stopped painting. All her life, she was drawn to waterscapes. Here, on the tropical island of Singapore, she painted its water scenes to her heart's content.
This land is truly one of the paradises of this world, with these calm and warm shores on which so many races live, blending their cultures and colors into a many splendid pattern to feast the avid eyes of the artist.
You see many Singapore river and waterfront scenes in Georgette Chen's paintings because I think this reflects her interest in painting outdoors. In some of her canvases, like the one painted in 1963, you can actually see Georgette Chen's car parked by the side of the Singapore River. Even through a painting like that, you can get a sense of Georgette's dedication to both her craft as well as her sense of place.
In describing her life in Singapore, Georgette drew inspiration from a happy childhood in Paris.
My present life is a non-stop merry-go-round, but as I revolve in the orbit of my own choice, I do spin merrily on, without a murmur.
There was, however, one illness that marred her bliss: rheumatoid arthritis. Georgette had inherited this incurable illness from her father. Occasionally, severe pain in her joints kept her homebound for days and disrupted her routine. She relied heavily on a drug called cortisone for relief. But she was desperate to get better more quickly.
I have been taking all sorts of Chinese things good for wind, like snake wine, roots of trees, etc. I have also had 6 injections of gold salt so far.
I'm glad that you are responding well to the gold salt treatment.
I don't know which is the most effective, but since last Sunday, there does seem to be an improvement in my general condition.
To her students and acquaintances, she was always a picture of composure. Only those closest to her knew the agony she endured and the courage she displayed.
Not a day passes without some pain in some joints. However, I'm learning to put up with it and regarding it as a nuisance rather than a serious malady. And I keep as active as possible.
Ever an optimist, Georgette was determined to live life to the fullest. To Georgette, Malaya was an artist's paradise, filled with vivid motifs awaiting her brush. On the days she was not teaching, she would devote herself to perfecting her craft. Once, she even drove all the way to the east coast of Malaya to seek inspiration.
Art, if you are sufficiently in love with it, never tires, never bores. It revives and uplifts.
During that trip in 1960, she produced 5 works. At least 2 of them are in Singapore's national collection.
For many of these works, you get a very strong sense of the richness and the vibrancy of colors. Under this particular light, in the tropics, colors appear extremely saturated. I think one of the reasons why you see such a lot of local subject matter in Georgette Chen's paintings is she considered that she had found a sanctuary here in Singapore and in Malaya, where there was a lot of unusual exciting colors and cultures which she could absorb. So I think really this sense of belonging, this sense of home, I think is very effectively and strongly conveyed in her paintings.
The cosmopolitan Georgette was always open to new experiences and cultures. In particular, the Malays and their way of life fascinated her.
She believed in her previous life, she's a Malay. So she likes to learn Malay also. Her Malay not bad because there's no tone in Malay. She can speak anything. All sounds alright to me.
Rohani Ismail was Georgette's student, close friend, and one of her many Malay models. Georgette used to give her a ride home after school, as they both lived in the Siglap neighborhood. They often met to paint, visit art exhibitions, go shopping, and savor their favorite nasi biryani, together with another student, Eng Eng Ting.
When in school, she's like a teacher to me. But when we go out, we are like friends. With Eng Ting, we crack jokes. When she feels quiet, she just sing, just burst into singing. Burung Kakak Tua and Bengawan Solo, she asked me to copy from the radio. She can sing until finish. That's good.
Besides Malay songs, Georgette also loved the vibrant colors and elegant patterns on batik.
Cantiknya, cantik tak Tuhani? Boleh buat chongsam dengan kain batik ni tak?
Ya, cantik coraknya. Saya rasa Madam Chen cantik kalau pakai warna ni.
Batik ini datang dari mana?
Yeah, we go to Arab Street to buy the batik. She chose green color, and usually she take to her tailor and she make chongsam. She said, everybody said, batik cannot make chongsam, but actually it's good, she said.
Berapa tanya ialah patut saya beli?
Besides her stylish chongsams, her curtains were also made from batik. She felt so close to the Malays that she even adopted a Malay name, Cendana, which means sandalwood. At age 55, Georgette took up Malay night classes in earnest. While preparing for an examination, she was completely oblivious to a major event that was unfolding.
On that historic morning of the 9th of August, I was immersed in the Malay language bath, being the very eve of the 3-day exams fixed for the 10th, 11th, and 12th of August.
Hello?
Georgette, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm studying for my Malay exam tomorrow.
Okay, good. Stay at home and keep the radio on.
Okay, bye-bye.
The telephone kept ringing with the same message. Don't go out under any circumstances and keep the radio on. I observed the first order, but not the second. It was only after the exams that I caught up with the news.
You see, the whole of my adult life, I had believed in merger and the unity of these two territories.
Singapore's separation from Malaysia came as a shock to many, including Georgette. Despite the political uncertainty, she decided to sink her roots in this fair land. She became a Singapore citizen in 1965. then, she had built herself a cozy 3-bedroom bungalow in Siglap, in eastern Singapore. More than just a physical shelter, the house was her emotional and spiritual sanctuary. A timeless world, filled with memories of her first husband, Georgette Chen.
I have recreated somewhat that ambience of those deathless days with dear Eugene. In fact, he would feel quite at home were he able to visit me. All the perfume of yesteryears with him is quite deathless and permeates this new existence. Friends marvel at my contentment.
Hers was a simple life, rich with friendships, but void of the trappings of wealth, much to the dismay of burglars who visited her home twice.
Not finding money, gold, or precious stones, in exasperation, he walked away with my old typewriter.
Although the encounters unnerved her, Georgette was relieved that the burglars did not fancy any of her artwork, for she regarded them as her children and could not bear to part with them. Throughout her life, Georgette harbored romantic ideas of being an impoverished artist.
Nobody expected me to make my way by painting alone. An artist has to be prepared to starve. But somehow, the artist loves his work so much that he struggles on and succeeds.
To Georgette, the fruit of her labor was simply the satisfaction of creating great works. A recurrent theme in her oeuvre was the vast variety of tropical fruits in Malaya. Although her personal favorite was the durian, it was the rambutan that captivated her eye and brush most. So much so that Chinese circles nicknamed her the rambutan specialist. Her main fruit supplier was her neighbor, Alfie Fu. His family had a rambutan tree in their backyard.
One day she came over to our house and asked me for some rambutan. So I climbed up the tree and picked the most ripe and reddest one I could find and the most perfect leaves and climbed down and gave it to her. And then she smiled and she said, "Can I have the half-ripe ones and the leaves that are half-dried?" Well, I did that, and later I found out that she liked the combination of colors of the half-ripened rambutans and the half-dried leaves. I think she did several paintings with rambutans, and I dare say that most of it came from our tree, that immortalized our tree.
Besides being skilled in painting still life, Georgette established herself as an outstanding portrait artist. She depicted her sitters with dexterity and sensitivity, from the face to the outfit, right down to the hands.
Amongst her peers in Singapore and Malaya, I would regard Georgette Chen as being one of the best artists in the genre of portraiture. She was extremely good at observation, very careful in her detail, and I think her rapport with the sitter is easily seen in many of her portraits.
Georgette especially enjoyed painting people she knew well. Among her favorite sitters were the Chen family, whom she had befriended during her Penang days. She painted the two younger children, Dorothy and Paul, in Malaya in the early 50s. After she moved to Singapore, the family of 5 often visited her. She spent countless hours entertaining her guests and also painted a large family portrait of them. By 1955, Georgette had completed the Chen family portrait, her largest painting in Singapore's national collection today. This is possibly the only portrait of an entire family that Georgette had painted.
We lived in Kuala Lumpur, and this painting was done in her house in Singapore. We went down there during one of the holidays with my mother, and she painted part of that, and then my father went at a different time. But we didn't all sit and have it painted at the same time because we were children then and we cannot sit for that long. We kind of take turns.
The large size of the family portrait deterred the Chens from buying it. But they supported Georgette by buying the 2 single portraits and a tropical fruit painting. Such income from close friends supplemented her meager teaching salary. Wealthy individuals also commissioned Georgette to paint, providing her with butter and jam on her otherwise plain bread slices.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
One loyal patron was Tunku Abdul Rahman, the first Prime Minister of Malaya. He first met Georgette and her first husband Eugene Chen on board a ship way back in 1931. Their friendship grew. Tunku later commissioned 3 paintings, including his own portrait. He also opened Georgette's first solo exhibition in Kuala Lumpur in 1956. Tunku's portrait and the Chen family portrait were among the highlights of the show. In the male-dominated world of art, Georgette was a prolific female artist ahead of her time. At the peak of her career, she created works that reached a new artistic high. Having previously lived in temperate countries, Georgette knew how daylight waxed and waned with the seasons, and how cold climates could limit outdoor painting. To her, the endless summer days of the tropics were a blessing she treasured. Once, she stumbled into a garden. What she saw mesmerized her.
What wonder, awe, humility awaits you the day you pitch your easel and come face to face with Mother Nature. You will discover that she is gorgeously asymmetrical with many changing moods. Serene, sonorous, supernal. Mother Nature stands deathless, always an inspiration for our brushes. Day after day, hour after hour, beginning at the rise of the sun, I stood entranced in front of a canvas, trying to capture those noble blooms, pink and white and pale green, in their different stages of growth, and not less their gallant and matching companions, those tall swaying leaves resembling giant toadstools. That was true communion with heaven.
Over a period of about 8 years, Georgette created a series of lotus paintings. Curators regard them as among the finest works in her oeuvre.
Here you have a stalk of flowers and leaves arranged outdoors. So the arrangement itself is stable or static, but the general environment of the lotus, the flowers and the leaves, is dynamic because the quality of light change as the clouds move, as the sun moves. So in a sense, Lotus in the Breeze encapsulates 2 different technical challenges for an artist. I think she captured the beauty and the dynamism of the lotus very well.
While Georgette was soaring to a new high in her art, her health was declining.
Sakit kaki mesti tolong jalan. Jalan pelan-pelan sampai kereta.
Georgette did mention that she had problems with arthritis, which was one of the reasons why she preferred the warm climate in Asia. But I've never seen her complain or showed she was in pain. She managed very well, although I did notice that as the years went by, she moved slowly and walked slowly.
In 1972, Georgette started to experience dizzy spells and considered quitting her teaching job. At 66, she was way past retirement age. The doctor's diagnosis was a blow to the ailing artist.
It looks like you have osteoporosis of the spine.
What is the cause?
Likely the cortisone. How many years have you been taking it for?
At least 15 years.
After taking iron and calcium pills, her blood count improved. Feeling much better, she changed her mind about retiring.
Thank you. I hope to continue at the school for as long as possible, in order not to disturb my securities too soon. I am a slow painter and simply cannot mass produce. I am slowly making a collection which I can fall back on in the future to increase my income if necessary. This last chapter of my life has been modest but creative and happy.
From the 1970s, Georgette began to produce more charcoal and pastel works.
Towards the later part of her life, when perhaps her health was not so good, she couldn't spend long hours sitting or standing to complete an oil painting, it was easier for her to complete a work done in charcoal or pastel.
Georgette's last self-portrait was done in this medium.
If you paint something in oils, it means that you're trying to make it last for a long time. Whereas something that's being done in charcoal and pastel, it's something more transient in a way, something that you don't think too much about doing. So that, I think, reflects also her sensibility after that.
Whilst her earlier portraits seem to have this sense of introspection, this air of melancholy in her facial expressions, in the later portraits you get a slight sense of smile, that she's smiling at the viewer. And I think this could perhaps be an indication, a hint of her state of mind in the 1960s. Perhaps this sense, a greater sense of cheerfulness, of being at peace with herself.
In the early 1960s, Georgette also did a self-portrait in watercolor. Despite her wide repertoire, Georgette was never a wealthy artist in her lifetime, and she didn't begrudge that. She was content to be a starving artist.
I can start this at $6 million before the $6 million. 600萬港幣, $6 million.
But her works would fetch far more than she could ever imagine years after her demise. By the late 1970s, Georgette's artistic output had fallen drastically. There were signs that her days at NAFA were numbered. She confided in her best friend living in China on how her health was fast deteriorating.
Dearest Yuphong, this year I have been unlucky with my arthritis, having had several bouts of it. I am in the midst of one right now, although under medication. My right knee bends with pain as I walk with a straight leg. However, I am hopeful that it will get somewhat better, as this attack has lasted nearly a month.
The next year, Georgette had a severe fall and cracked a bone in her leg. After months of recovery, she continued to teach in NAFA. It was in end January 1981 that she finally retired. By then, she was 75 and had served NAFA for 26 years. Georgette's retirement was sadly short-lived. She had another fall the same year and was hospitalized. During the 12 years she was bedridden in hospital, she allowed only a select group of friends and relatives to see her. Georgette was never well enough to return home. Her concerned friends hired private nurses to attend to her round the clock. Till this day, the caregivers remember her fondly as a gracious, uncomplaining patient. Alfie also cherishes memories of his neighbor, who remains his ever beautiful friend.
I realized that after spending many years knowing her, I did not even have a photograph of her. So I went to see her and brought a camera with me. But I should have known she didn't want her picture to be taken because her hair was not done properly and she was looking frail. And she asked me not to take her photograph. Instead, she directed me to her self-portrait put against the ladder in the storeroom. She told me to go and take it to remember her, I believe, in that way. This portrait is the most beautiful one I've seen of her, and I liked it. She probably did it when she was in her 20s, one of the earliest works she had.
At age 76, Georgette was honored for her outstanding achievements and contributions to art in Singapore. She received the Cultural Medallion, the nation's highest accolade for artists, in 1982. A group of close friends helped to organize a solo exhibition in Singapore in 1985. A similar show was put up in Kuala Lumpur the year after. Around that time, gallery owners Lucy and her late husband Christopher Singh started collecting the works of Singapore's pioneer artists. When Christopher learned that many of Georgette's paintings were with the Lee Foundation, he made his move.
In 1989, when we went to see Mr. Lee from the Lee Foundation, he told us that we only can buy one. But there were so many to choose from, we couldn't decide. And so in the end, he let us have 4. So we were very lucky.
Christopher treasured Georgette's paintings and didn't intend to sell them. Instead, he wanted to leave them to his 4 children.
In the end, since somebody offered such high prices, that's why he sold it.
The first to go were Easter Lilies and Mooncakes and Lanterns in 1994. They were followed by Fruits and Vegetables the next year. The paintings caused a stir when they were presented by Christie's.
In any given auction, there are high points and sort of low points. So you conduct the auction like as if you were conducting an orchestra. In the earlier sales, from the 90s, we would have placed a number of Georgette Chen's works right at the very end of the sale, so that the majority of our collectors wouldn't have wanted to leave the auction room and would have stayed on for this crescendo, for this high point in the sale coming at the end.
The Singh family still runs their art gallery at Tangan Road. But they no longer own any of Georgette's paintings. Christopher, who contracted cancer, sold his last and favorite painting of nasturtiums in 2005 to pay for his medical treatment.
I can start this at $6 million before the $6 million.
Over the years, the value of Georgette's works has appreciated exponentially.
6 million to 6 million 5.
In 2013, Sotheby's Hong Kong auctioned off Lotus Symphony for a princely sum of close to $1 million US, a record price for the artist.
Fair warning, sold at 7 million 6.
The collectors were all mesmerized by the detailing that was on the paintings. Of course, the main subject matter were the lotuses, but we had clients counting out the little insects that were on the paintings.
The exquisite work caught the eye of two avid Chinese collectors. They're the owners of the Lung Museum in Shanghai, China's largest private art museum.
当时看了那个图册之后，我就非常感动。等我拍卖完了，我立马就到他们库房里，叫他们拿出来给我看这件作品。我觉得真的看得很感动。他用色啊，包括布景啊，真的都是用心，而且很自然，有这种安静感，很平和的一种感觉。我非常喜欢这幅画。
Today, demand for Georgette's works is still growing.
There aren't that many around in the first place. That's one of the reasons why it's actually driving up the prices. Her appeal, some would say, is the simplicity, the easiness of appreciating an artwork.
The value of Georgette Chen's works really hinge on her position within a larger Asian art history. In a sense, she is considered a pioneer in Singapore art, and as far as the market for modern Singapore artists is concerned, she commands a really sort of high place within the market.
To Dorothy Chen, Georgette's paintings simply have sentimental value that cannot be measured.
I know that recently at Sotheby's there had been, some fabulous prices paid for some of her paintings. I have my own portrait and also the Rambutan. I have absolutely no intention of auctioning off my childhood. That painting is me. She captured me, and I have no intention of parting with them.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for coming.
Dorothy and her French husband were close friends of Georgette for many years. Until today, Patrick remembers the very first time he met her.
She was extremely graceful. I had a good time with her. I expected to meet a very impressive person. I met a very impressive person.
The last time I saw her was probably just before her death. She was even more thin. And she was well groomed. I mean, she did not, let herself go. Sort of, her hair was in place, and she had nail polish on her, and so she was manicured. I chatted with her, and I remember I kissed her on both cheeks when I left her, because I just felt that it probably wouldn't be too long, and she passed away soon after that.
Georgette holds a very special place in Singapore's art history, being the first female artist to have achieved such success, and more importantly on the impact and influence that she has had on the development of our art and our artists in Singapore.
She educated an entire generation of artists who are now very established figures in the art scene.
exhibition is one of the greatest treasures of artworks that we have in the national collection.
She represented a woman that had the resilience, the can-do attitude, irrespective of what life dished out to her. She was able to grapple with all the different situations and come out successfully, being happy, being curious, enjoying what talent that life has given her.